Welcome! Today I'm talking about why hanging out with a bestie is so good for us. It's called Endorphins Anyone. Well, I don't know about you, but I love my digital devices. I love the convenience and connectivity they bring. I also love some aspects of AI, but to be honest, I love people more. Well, to be even more honest, I don't love them all, but my world is richer for the humans in it, and I'm appalled by how hard it seems to be to make meaningful connections these days. For many, they're as rare as clean, unpolluted water. I recently read a disturbing report concluding that Britain's teenage girls are the loneliest in Europe. They admit to having alarmingly few friends, a statistic that's been worsening steadily since monitoring began. And girl teens are not the only segment of society where this trend is well documented. It's hard to read any media these days without finding some reference to the loneliness epidemic. Here are just a few of the headlines I've clocked recently. We've become a lonely nation. It's time to fix that. The New York Times. Why is the loneliness epidemic so hard to cure? The New York Times Magazine. The loneliness trap. It's said to be as bad as smoking, so will it shorten my lifespan? The Guardian. How loneliness is damaging our health. New York Times again. We have to go out and touch people. How activism is tackling the loneliness epidemic. The Guardian again. Let's start. Well, anyways, this came up in a random search, but it could possibly because I actually do look at the New York Times and the Guardian, but it seems that those were the top headlines, so nothing to do with me, they just came up in a random search. But let's start with a little teaser. A 2-question friendship quiz, if you like. And with only 2 questions, on a superficial level, as in a beer mat calculation, it'll take you less than a minute to answer these questions. But if you tend to be an existential thinker, it might take a little longer, perhaps even the rest of your life. To avoid undue angst, and as I'm all about edutainment, not stressing people out, I suggest going with the beer mat option, i.e. beer mat calculation, for anyone who doesn't know that, we British people talk about it a lot. A beer mat calculation is simply the volume of information you can cram onto one of those beer mats you get in pubs to stop water rings on the tables. So, question 1. How many friends do you have? Okay, so that might be a little bit confrontational and personal. So maybe a better question is, how many friends do you have who would help if you needed it? Like, that might be a small loan when you forgot your wallet and can't pay for your cappuccino, a lift to the hospital if you can't get there under your own steam, a shoulder to cry on when you've just found you're losing your job. Okay, take a moment with that. And then let's go to question 2. So this is turning the tables. How many people would you be there for in the same way? Both of these this is clearly hypothetical, but one way of evaluating it would be to think how often friends come to you to help them out of some pickle. So they therefore see you as someone who might be inclined to help them. So in terms of this, there's a hint. There is no right answer to either of these questions, just the honest one. So I see friendship really as being about the power of reciprocity. I mean, the point about strong friendships, and I include kinship in this broad church, they revel in reciprocity. They're never just a one-way street. Friends have each other's backs. Friends invite and share confidences. They laugh and cry together. Deep, lasting friendships are everything they're cracked up to be, because a friendship means at least one person sees us and we see them back. In my book, Human Connection is the absolute antidote to invisibility. Friendship makes the world an infinitely more benevolent place. Friendship opens the possibility of new connections and opportunities. When we have at least one friend, we're never truly alone. In short, nothing in the world comes close to the wonder of being needed and of allowing the people we care about to need us in return. It's like receiving a kiss from an angel. Human connections, like family ties, friendships, water cooler moments with work buds, the camaraderie of a club, etc. Let's face it, they can be tricky to navigate. Sometimes they're outright confrontational, but without them, we just become isolated units afraid of our own shadows. And what family has never ever agreed about everything? I certainly know mine hasn't. And which lovers never have tiffs? I can remember some stand-up shouting matches with some of mine. But like pans of water, friendships sometimes boil over, but caring people know when to turn the heat down. So it's kind of researched and documented that healthy friendships improve your emotional intelligence. So let's start with, according to, you all know the dating app Bumble. I found some research on Bumble. I'm not on Bumble, but it came up in a random search, and it's It's about relationships and friendships. And so, from the Gospel according to Bumble, healthy friendships stimulate a powerful cocktail of oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, all your feel-good hormones, elevate your mood and optimize your hormonal response to stress. Certain people inherently trigger these positive chemical reactions. Your friends. A supportive social network, i.e. a lot of friends, can help you live longer with less anxiety and fewer health problems. Well, that all sounds great, but it's true, connecting deeply with others when it's clear they get you and you get them develops healthy brain cells and helps build positive neural pathways in the brain. The fuel for these is a mix of empathy, intuition, thoughtfulness, assertiveness, care, and love. So let's think about this for a moment, about our brain's pleasure pathways. There's nothing like catching up with an old friend and chewing the fat to trigger that well-known happy drug, oxytocin. You might be rewarded for the pleasure of your friendship with the additional rushes of feel-good serotonin and dopamine as your brain reinforces how great it all is. But it just keeps getting better. Think about past moments around your kitchen table, sharing a bottle of wine with a friend, or something like that, when you're literally crying with laughter, when you're reduced to helpless tears of mirth. Laughing triggers the release of the neurochemicals that sit at the top of the feel-good pantheon, those things we call endorphins. And once triggered, these little suckers not only make us feel over the moon happy, but also help fortify us with resilience and grit if or when another cascade of those pesky lemons that life tends to chuck at you cascade down on your head. But on the other side of the coin, loneliness actually triggers its own chain reaction of psychological changes that they can increase inflammation and ramp up your fight or flight stress response, which is inherently stressful. This has the knock-on effect of weakening the immune system and a tendency to isolate from each other. And of course, at the end of that journey, sadly, depression lurks. Again, in Bumble's words, you get stuck in a negative biochemical feedback loop. So how do we navigate the loneliness trap? I mean, given all the above, why are so many people losing the ability to find or make friends? Isolation, unplanned. I'm not talking about the introverts who choose to be alone. That's a different thing altogether. But unwanted isolation and loneliness leave people sad and questioning their worth and their self-esteem. It's a downward spiral that can compromise your health. Spending time with people, on the other hand, and having a sense of belonging are the best ways out of this because they help with good mental health. Possibly they're even the pathway to that so very difficult to define state called happiness. But all too often these days, old friends and family members can't find enough common ground to trust one another. Too many of us are angry, marginalised and alone. Othered, to use that very contemporary expression of otherness, othered, invisible even. There's no doubt that many relationships are challenged by the creative tension of different worldviews and perspectives. But much of the value of strong human bonds comes from celebrating our differences through listening and understanding. The endorphins from a belly laugh offer much more wellness than any amount of expensively priced and improbably sounding Goop product could ever do. And there really is genuinely no substitute for in-person, face-to-face meetings. I mean, most of us just want to feel happy. Collectively, collaboratively, meaningfully, joyfully, boisterously, teasingly, laughingly, lovingly, competitively, forgivingly, restoratively, reinforcingly, peacefully, purposefully, give-and-takingly, supportively. Pick your adverb. I think they all fit. But challenging though it sometimes is, being together is cleverly designed to allow for that possibility through our pleasure responses. Let's face it, the COVID years were a disaster in so many ways, not least the shift to online everything. I got a bit carried away there. The shift to online everything and the retreat to the relative safety of our homes and the virtual moats we dug around ourselves. For sure, you can have great online friendships, and social platforms are an amazing way to stay in touch. I really love that I'm connected with old school friends, university chums, and people from every stage of my life and different places I've lived in, whom I probably would otherwise have lost contact with. But that's still not a patch on the happy, laughter-filled reunions we have when I go back to the UK or meet people from the past, from some past iteration of me, and we revel in our present as much as we do in our glory days. But there's this thing called the technological doom loop. Okay, I don't blame technology for all the world's ills. There are clearly other disturbing trends keeping people apart. And, there's the culture wars, the ideological divisions that are ripping families, communities and nations apart. The inability to hear each other's point of view seems endemic. Like many of us, I actually see a dangerous moment, a kind of bifurcation moment, where we could continue to become more isolated, more tribal and more digitally dependent, less human even, as we doom scroll and troll, or we could stay on the human path and become more connected again. But at moments like this, we need our fellow beings and all their foibles to save us from the creeping apartness that comes from too much time devoted to apps, devices, AI, friends, and bots in general. We need our friends and our people big time to help us span the ideological divides. We absolutely have to revisit the pleasure to be had in the company of other human beings in all our quirky, muddled, brilliant glory. So I remember that in Grey's Anatomy, Meredith Grey and her best friend Christina Yang were each other's people. They were so close that they agreed they would be the first person they'd call if they ever needed to hide a dead body. They would be there for each other, come what may. Close, caring relationships are precious. They're worth their weight in gold even. So if you are feeling a bit isolated and longing for more companionship, here are some top-of-mind thoughts to help perhaps. So maybe start with, are there any friends and family you've fallen out with where eating a bit of humble pie could repair the relationship? It's an obvious place to start. There's nothing like a heartfelt apology if you're in the wrong, or a bit of genuine forgiveness to thaw cold hearts. What about getting to know the people who live near you? There's a real ease in creating and maintaining the relationship where there's a physical proximity, but it's horrible how few of us actually know our neighbours. Many a good friendship started with a conversation over the back fence or an invitation to plan an annual street party. I actually read very recently that instead of setting up an escape pack for yourself, friendships and trust between neighbours is going to be the thing that's going to save you in an emergency like a fire or a tsunami, or in our case, we recently had terrible flooding. So it's worth thinking about. Get to know those people next door. Then you might check out the local business networks. I moved to a new city a few months ago and joined the local Chamber of Commerce. I'm not a great fan of institutionalised networking. I've done so much of it in my time, I'm a bit over it. But it certainly opens doors through fostering commonality and purpose. I even got invited to speak at an event, which was lovely, and I have got to know a few people. So the other thing you could do is perhaps you could go to something and be around other people. You might want to join a club, a society, or a membership organisation. Get religion, sign up for a course in something you've always wanted to try. Painting, woodworking, cooking, winemaking, beer making, whatever does it for you. I've sung in choirs since the year dot, and many of my long-standing friends are also singers. I've also played in orchestras, but I don't currently. In my new city, I've joined 2 choirs, and I'm really enjoying the collegiality of singing together and the purpose of building towards a concert. It's a really lovely way to get to know people. But then the last one I'd say is remember the Meredith and Christina rule from Grey's Anatomy above. Don't be the aggro person in the room. Imagine yourself as someone's person and know that you can find yours. Keep an open mind when people say things you don't agree with. Listen and chip in, but leave the shouty, angry person at home, please. That person will never be someone else's person. And lastly, hang out with your fam, besties, lovers and co-workers in person if you can, but get online if there's no choice. Remember those quarantinis in COVID? They actually did fill a huge gap. It was lovely to be able to spend, a cocktail hour with people we cared about. But don't be shy. Other people are lonely too and might really welcome your overture. So send out an invite, ask someone, join something, do something. Don't leave it up to other people to invite you in. So those are some of my ways of finding new people. Have you got a secret sauce that will help you find endorphin-inducing companionship? I'd love it if you'd share it on my webpage. Thanks, or in the comments here. Thanks anyway. So go forth and find those friends.